Good evening and a warm welcome to all of you who have taken the time to be here for this evening's event. Just before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm physically located just south of Ottawa on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. My name is Michelle D'Amico and I'm the Executive Director of NIED, the National Initiative for Eating Disorders. NIED just reached our 10-year milestone as a leader in fostering awareness, understanding, and action for eating disorders in Canada. And tonight's event is about celebrating the passion and commitment of so many young people from across Canada who are igniting change and making a difference in the way that those impacted by eating disorders are acknowledged, cared for, and supported. All of this evening's speakers are hoping to inspire you to think about what you can do or what else you can do to make a difference in the lives of others. Before I introduce our moderators, I'd like to take a moment to thank Wendy Preskow, the founder and president of NIED, and Lynn Koss, the co-founder and vice president, for their commitment to making a difference over the past 10 years. It's really about their passion, dedication, and go big or go home motto that NIED is where it is today. So thank you so much to Wendy and Lynn for all of the work that you've done over the past 10 years and really for bringing us to this point. I'd also like to thank Frame for their generous co-sponsorship of tonight's event. Frame's vision is that all youth, young adults, and their families have access to the help that they need to be well when they need it and in the context in which they live. Thank you so much, Frame, for your generous support of this event. Finally, I'd like to thank Lynn and her amazing team of volunteers for putting this event together. Two of those volunteers, Claire and Nicole, have played an integral role in organizing and promoting this event and will be our moderators for this evening. Claire has been an exceptional volunteer with NIED since the beginning in 2021. She has a passion for mental health and has lived experience. She attended King's University College at Western University and is now a writer and journalist. Her knowledge and skills have contributed immensely to our social media and communications teams. She's organized and handles our social media content calendar, and her suggestions and creative graphic ideas have been invaluable. Our second moderator for tonight is Nicole, who joined NIED in February of 2022 and has already made a significant impact. She's a student at Wilfrid Laurier University, and as a go-getter volunteer, she's taken on and initiated ideas on our social media and communications team. She's also signed on as one of our knitters for our Hand Knit Hope program. Now I'd like to hand it over to you, Claire and Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for the introduction. Let's get started because we have so many amazing presenters lined up for tonight's event. For our first presentation, we're welcoming Dr. Heather Wheeler, a clinical psychologist and mental health lead with the Canadian Sport Institute of Ontario. We're also welcoming Kirsten Moore-Towers, a Canadian Olympic pairs figure skater who has been outspoken about the harmful prevalence of eating disorders among Olympic athletes. Kirsten has personally dealt with an eating disorder and worked with a nutritionist and psychologist to help her return to regular eating habits. Please welcome me in. Please join me in welcoming these two amazing women.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And I just want to start by saying I'm so thrilled to be here tonight and so grateful to Wendy and Lynn and the whole crew at NIED for putting this together. I feel really honored that I was a part of NIED's early initiatives from 2012 to 2017, and knowing that the mission continues to bring collective voices together like they are tonight is really, really making me hopeful for the way ahead. So, all right, let's get started. I'm just going to introduce that Kirsten will be speaking after me. I'm just going to start by sharing a little bit about eating disorders in sport and then hand it over to her because that's the more important part, the personal story that kind of brings things to light and makes things come alive. But in my role at Canadian Sport Institute Ontario, I'm collecting the stories of mental health champions like Kirsten's. And I really hope that you'll hear from her and feel inspired to share more stories. So here we are, finally making its way to headlines and front page news. Eating disorders and disordered eating are definitely a big part of sport for both males and females. Some studies show that in the subculture of certain sports, especially those where aesthetics or weight play a role, such as gymnastics, figure skating, rowing, wrestling, have as many as 45% of their female athletes and 19% of their males engaging in disordered eating practices. Of course, it's actually really hard to tell how many of these athletes have a full-blown eating disorder for many reasons, but certainly the rates are higher than the general population. One of the main reasons we don't know how many are suffering is because athletes do not see it as a problem and most often don't seek help when they should. Most athletes and coaches feel that doing bad things to your body and ignoring your internal signals is kind of what you signed up for when you enter the world of sport. So for decades, coaches and athletes have kind of felt that in order to obtain a certain look, a power to weight ratio, or aerodynamics, we have to focus on body composition and get the metrics right and make sure that the mathematics kind of create success and therefore podium medals. But if you look at humans as not mathematical equations, which of course makes a lot more sense and is more real, the science of body composition, shows us that actually it doesn't, there's no correlation. The human variables in between play a big role in whether there is success or not. So the impact on mental health that I have witnessed firsthand in striving for that perfect body or that perfect body composition is the exact thing that gets in the way from making it to the podium or the Olympic Games in so many cases. So I'm really, really grateful for the human spirit wanting to break the silence and these sort of news articles like this and the power of collective voice found in them, because I think that we are at a place where we've never been before in terms of the willingness to share stories. And I'm really grateful to people like Kirsten who are doing the same and continue that momentum. But essentially, we really need to hear from behind the scenes about what the real science is, right? What really happens when athletes don't listen to their bodies. Furthermore, the science that has brought us to this point is actually not sound. More and more research is coming out about the detrimental effects on performance for athletes who either aren't menstruating or just aren't getting enough fuel to or energy to fuel their bodies. In sport, recent research has focused on the concept of relative energy deficiency in sport, or for short, we call it REDS. And it's an outcome of unintentional or intentional efforts to change one's performance, enhance one's performance through changing one's diet or weight. Through the lens of REDS and the unfortunate performance of health consequences you see here, the lack of power, endurance, slow recovery rates, and including mental illness, including full-blown eating disorders, more athletes are getting identified earlier. Collectively, we are working hard to educate coaches and athletes alike that even short periods of underfueling, a small effort to just change something about someone's body or diet, can lead to athletes getting stuck in a mind-body cycle that we all know too well in terms of lifelong eating disorders, particularly in those who are at risk for personality or sport-specific reasons. But changing a culture is hard. Coaches are the most important person in an elite athlete's life. If a coach or trainer convinces the athlete that they're too big, too fat, they can't do their job because of that, that athlete is likely to do anything to change it and please them. The pressure to perform is really high. There's always a next generation athlete ready to take their place if they don't succeed, let alone the public shaming and financial loss if they don't. It will take a lot of time and science and education to change the status quo belief that lighter is better, smaller is faster. I see the current wave of dealing with mental health crisis in sport, including eating disorders, is very similar to what we had to go through with identifying and treating concussions in sport and developing the protocols and policies to support those athletes. As a psychologist, all I can do day in and day out as I hear the stories of pain and abuse is to actually empower athletes to break the silence and say this isn't okay. I truly believe that's the most powerful way, and for us to get the stories about the human behind the athlete, the multifaceted 3D version of themselves, as Kirsten again will hopefully do tonight better than I can. While we have a long way to go, teams of dedicated professionals have made some significant progress in high performance sport in Canada, and the main message again is humans first, athletes second. So change is happening and I'm really excited to be a part of it. I'm right in the middle of it. people are talking about mental health and people are inviting myself and others to the table to discuss how we can include it in the yearly strategies for training, their mission and values for the national and provincial sporting organizations. We're working on improving screening for eating disorders in athletes, among other mental health concerns. Resources have been put in place across Canada for funding, for support, as well as for helping organizations with their changes and supports for mental health. There's education going on like this and more for all levels, coaches all the way up to the CEOs and the media, making sure that we have athlete stories, the good and the bad and the ugly, that we also have a process to increase trust in the system all the way through. And this is just one example of guidelines and policies being put into effect in different sports. This was Skate Canada. I'm sure Kirsten's voice was heard in developing these in the last few years. And I know other professionals working hard in Gymnastics Canada and Cycling Canada who are trying to break down some of the archaic practices like weighing athletes in public. Whether we get buy-in from all leaders at all levels, let alone people like judges and policymakers, is yet to be seen. But this is a great start, and there's a lot of voices wanting to come forward. We just need to create a space for them, and this is an example of that. So the way ahead includes holding coaches and athletes and organizations accountable to break the silence, adding to the science that we have, and making sure that there is dissemination of that education and that science to those who need to hear it, and developing sport-specific eating disorder mental health resources in a way that will support athletes better. Lastly, I'm committed to collecting the voices of athletes at all levels and trying to find ways to get them heard. Kirsten and I, among others, are formulating some plans for a way to do this more effectively. For now, I'm going to invite athletes, coaches, parents to reach out to me directly. You can find me on my website. This is my email address, drheatherwheeler@outlook.com, and I'll be collecting and then getting back in touch as we get closer to the how we're going to do that most effectively. But for everybody, please keep sharing and keep hopeful. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, Heather, for that amazing presentation. I always love learning from you. As Heather mentioned, my name is Kirsten Moore-Towers, and I am a 4-time Canadian champion, 3-time Olympian, and Olympic silver medalist in pair skating. I knew from an early age that I wanted to go to the Olympics. In fact, when I was 7 years old, I told my mom that I was going to go. And my mom is a nice, realistic lady, and she said to me, you know what, Kirsten, not a lot of people get to go to the Olympics, but if you try your best, that should be good enough for you. And I kind of said to her, well, somebody has to go. Why can't it be me? I started pair skating when I was almost 16 years old, in the thick of puberty, at a time when my body was changing from that of a girl to a woman. And for those who are unfamiliar, pair skating is the discipline in figure skating when a man and a woman skate together and the man lifts and throws the woman into death-defying tricks. It was really the first time in my life that I saw my body as, and for all of its imperfections, and not just as a vessel that helped me do really cool stuff. And my change in focus really came from the superiors around me, molding and shaping my thoughts with their words and their actions. And comparison between athletes were frequent, and surprise weigh-ins were normal for us. I've always been intrinsically motivated by pleasing my teachers and my coaches, so much so that my entire worth can be wrapped around how they feel about me or my performance on any given day. So when my coach pulled me aside following a weigh-in and suggested that I take an unhealthy approach to my weight loss, I didn't give it a second thought. I viewed my career very seriously and considered it my job to be successful no matter what it took. Thus began my 10-year battle on and off with bulimia and anorexia nervosa. Most of that time, I was what you would consider an atypical anorexic, meaning my body was underweight and undernourished, but didn't present as such. This made it challenging for me to both accept that I needed help and to get it. I struggled with not only pleasing my coaches, but also with feeling okay in my own body while simultaneously competing on the world stage. Obsessive thoughts over food and weight took over my life. My story, though, is one of extremes, both positive and negative. Following this experience, I moved training locations, and I had a coach who made it clear to me that if he ever heard of me being unhealthy in my eating habits, I would not be welcome to skate there anymore. He directed me to a nutritionist and a psychologist who could help me, like Heather mentioned, and I am positive that he saved my career that day. My coaches continually checked in with me to monitor my progress and my mental state without overstepping. And I knew I could go to them with any problem that I had. They viewed me as a human first and an athlete second. I think Dr. Heather mentioned that as well. And that was so important for me. A few years ago, I came forward with my story through the platform of a TSN short piece. I was reluctant at first, but ultimately felt that it was important for me to share my difficulties in the hope that it would help at least one other athlete. I thought at the very least it would make somebody feel less alone. The response I was met with was shocking. I couldn't believe the sheer number of athletes who had experienced mental health difficulties similar to mine. Recovery can be frustrating and nobody's journey is linear. I vacillated the continuum of healthy versus unhealthy for many years. Thought patterns are difficult to change, but not impossible if we're committed to doing the tedious work. With the right people surrounding me and the proper treatment, I was able to make a full recovery and compete at my last Olympics as a healthy athlete, which was so important to me, of course. The other day, actually, I was speaking about my story at a seminar, and the parent of a young girl who was struggling asked me if I thought that these thoughts and behaviors stayed with us forever, or if there was hope for her daughter to live a healthy life. And the best thing I could come up with in response was that living with these struggles is like swimming in a pool with a beach ball. Hear me out. The beach ball represents my eating disorder and its triggers. And you can see the ball floating around you and you know it's there, but if ever you try to suppress it and hold it under the water for any period of time, you know, it like shoots up in the air, big splash, big commotion. For me, the older I get and the more I learn about myself, the bigger my pool gets. Now I'm floating in a river. The beach ball is floating somewhere in this river too, but I see it less and less. One day, I hope to float in the ocean. With events like this and people like you making an active effort to understand more about how we can shift the cultures of our sports, I'm encouraged not only for myself, but for our young people and for their future. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to my story. I can't wait to hear everybody else.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather and Kirsten, for sharing your presentation with us. Our next one will be given by Michaela Harley and Christy Allen, who are members of the Knowledge Equity Team at FRAME, which is also the sponsor of The Way Ahead. FRAME is a national network dedicated to transforming the youth mental health system. Following their presentation, we also have a video from Elise Trudell, the founder of The Starving Artist. Ali's art and activism initiative blends lived experiences with mental health and eating disorders into artistic research and expression, as well as collaboration with treatment teams and educational institutions. Please help us in welcoming Michaela, Christy, and Ali.
Wonderful. Thank you, Claire. While we get the slides up, and they may already be up, I may just not be able to see them, but I will begin just conscious of time. My name is Michaela Harley. As mentioned, my role at FRAME is Senior Engagement and Knowledge Equity Lead. I'm joined by my colleague, Christy Allen. She is our Knowledge Equity Specialist. And as mentioned, we are also joined via a pre-recorded video by the wonderful and talented Ali, who is a fierce advocate in the space and a member of FRAME Groundbreakers, which you'll learn more about shortly. We want to take a moment to acknowledge that the FRAME office is located in Ottawa, Ontario, and is built on the unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture the land. In our work at FRAME, we are committed to acknowledging our relationship with the land, to our roles in colonization, and our responsibility to truth and reconciliation. We wanted to also take a moment to acknowledge both as presenters and co-funders our immense gratitude to having the opportunity to support such a profoundly impactful event, and are grateful for the work that folks are doing in order to advance the space of eating disorders. So with that, I'll jump in and chat a little bit about who Frame is, what we do, but conscious of time, so I'll zip on through, but to find out more, you can check out our website. So Frame is a national knowledge mobilization organization advancing integrated youth service sites and substance use practices in Canada. In essence, we're a system intermediary with the goal of supporting the provision of services rather than actually providing those direct services itself. So taking research, for instance, or evidence and pushing it forward to be useful to the people who are making changes, whether that's youth, caregivers, advocates, healthcare leaders, etc. In part of our role, we host a network of over 400 partner organizations, including clinicians and researchers and policymakers, with the goal of facilitating collaboration and knowledge sharing. We approach this work through a social justice lens, seeking to amplify the voices of folks who are traditionally unheard in the research and knowledge sharing sphere. So I'll pass it off to Christy to talk about one of the mechanisms that we do that through, which is our Groundbreakers Network. So off to you, Christy.
Thanks, Michaela. So as Michaela mentioned, Groundbreakers is Frame's National Lived Expertise Network. So we know that to get the answers to these solutions in transforming the youth mental health and substance use system, we need to talk to those who are accessing it, and we need to include them in creating these solutions and their caregivers as well. So we have a network of over 250 youth caregivers and advocates across Canada and internationally who we work with on all our knowledge mobilization activities at Frame. And we're really pleased tonight to have you hear from one of our youth groundbreakers, Elise Trudell. She's an artist and an activist, and she's currently in Scotland, so she's pre-recorded a presentation for us that we'll have on the screen very shortly here. So I'll stop sharing my screen and you'll hear from Ali.
Hi there, my name's Elise Trudell and I'm an artist and activist. I'm currently based in Glasgow, Scotland, and I'm a Frame groundbreaker. So I'm just going to get started and share a bit about me and my work. So a little bit about me is that I run the Starving Artist, and it's an artist initiative that's focused on exploring eating disorders and really mental illness through the creative voice. For myself, for such a long time, I thought if I was thinner, I would be happier, but instead the opposite occurred and I really became confined to my body with an eating disorder that lasted over 10 years. Now for myself, I found that experience incredibly difficult. Those around me in my life didn't understand it. I come from an Eastern European family where mental health wasn't really talked about. And then medical practitioners saw me as a diagnosis, and they didn't see me as someone suffering from a disease. So what I tried to do is use my artistic voice, but also my personal experiences to authentically represent what it's like living with an eating disorder. Now, the Starving Artist itself, like I said, is an initiative that explores these mental illnesses such as eating disorders and body dysmorphia, but we also do a lot of creative research and using art as that platform. Some of these include exhibitions, publications, workshops, and talks, but we also do collaborations with treatment teams to help improve the systems to be more patient-oriented, and then also work with educational institutions to help youth and really people in current systems to use their artistic voices to express their lived-in experiences. So with eating disorders, there's two very common misrepresentations. Often when people think of eating disorders, we think of a thin white female, and it's either shown on TV or in movies as someone who's trying to lose weight for prom and eating carrot sticks on treadmills. Or on the other end of the spectrum, we have somebody who's depicted far larger than the average person, and they are seen as not being able to control themselves around food. Yes, there's people with these lived-in experiences. However, the mainstream media has limited it only to these two perspectives. There's countless people from different genders, different backgrounds, different diversities and intersectionalities of illnesses that are not having their voices represented. So what my work tries to do is tackle these issues. So both myself and the artists that I work with really try to counteract these stereotypical representations and that strong focus on that physical body What we try to do instead is look at that mind-body relationship that's going on and show through our insider perspectives the depths of what people actually struggle with when they endure mental illness such as an eating disorder. I just wanted to share a couple bits of my work. The first ones here really are trying to show why art is so important in these conversations. When someone says that I feel like I couldn't get out of bed or I was crying for days, people, yes, understand what that's like, but they don't feel it, especially medical practitioners. So what I tried to do is visually communicate that in my work to remind people of the human that is suffering within these illnesses. Another work here is called Euphoria, and what happened for myself was there was a long period in my life where I sought the comfort in food. So whenever I had a bad day at work or family or stress with friends and really just life crippling and weighing me down, I sought comfort in food, and it took me out of my daily life and brought me to a place of happiness and ecstasy, which is Cheerios for a long time. Now, another small bit of work that I want to share was called Popping Pills and Popping Bills. And these works really look at what it's like to be consumed within, I would say, media, and especially for young people where this pressure is so eminent. If we think about how there's a green tea pill or a metabolism pill or a weight loss pill, and then you have to take anxiety medication or depression medication because you're unable to cope with all these other pills you have to take. You end up becoming consumed both by these unrealistic standards put upon yourself, but then also consumed in the goal to strive to achieve these, and you tend to lose yourself within the process. And I really just want to share how impactful the work has been, and I've been able to have so many great opportunities across the world to share my art and the voice. I was able to meet Prince William. He's actually really tall in person, and the work has been shown all over Europe, Canada, even in Asia. We're trying to work within Latin American countries and also in Southern Asian countries in the next couple of years, which is great just to have this voice shared with all these different communities because across the globe, so many people are suffering. So just a couple quick insights from my work. First off, I think we shouldn't shy away from art and mental health treatment and health as a whole. When we have very sensitive mental health issues, we need to handle them with the utmost care. And I think art is a great way to facilitate those conversations. I also think we should strive to include a diversity of experiences, not just in eating disorders, but in all mental health illnesses to understand the landscape of what people are actually going through. And then also, I think this last point is that when someone has been through recovery and really just someone living with an illness, especially with eating disorders, we often get labeled as disabled or an issue of vanity, and our voices have been neglected from these conversations. But what I try to share is that through both my art and the research and my voice is that we're able to effectively contribute to the discourse and help make systemic change. Now, just a couple small things for you guys. Although you may not be all medical practitioners, I think what I did was I found my voice in, through my passion, which is art. So I think that you guys should let your passions guide your work, whether it be baking, poetry, or sports, whatever it is. I think using your personal journeys and using your experiences in whatever way, shape, or form to help make a difference is so important. And especially with my art and my work, I genuinely believe that being vulnerable and authentic helps form better and stronger communication with people. So just carry that within your daily life as a whole. But thank you all for this brief chance to share a bit about me. Feel free to get in touch more. I'll keep my handles below. But yeah, back to frame.
Ladies, as we saw, visual art is an amazing creative outlet to share and further reflect on one's experiences and emotions. Leave a comment in the chat box if there are any other mediums that you, the audience, use as an outlet for stress relief. I know that personally, I really enjoy journaling and just writing in general to unload my thoughts. And similar to Ali, it's just such a good way to really let everything out. But yeah, drop it in the chat, see what everybody else has to say as well. Our next presenters are from the Recovery Foundation, an organization that provides funding for the medical expenses for treatments of mental health issues, specifically for individuals who are in need of financial assistance. They're also part of our Ontario Collaborative of Eating Disorders organizations. Please welcome the founder of the Recovery Project, Sarah Farquhar.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me. And Lynn, thank you so much for reaching out and inviting me to this event. I was supposed to be here with one of our other volunteers, Kelly, but unfortunately she couldn't make it today. But yeah, so I kind of just wanted to share a bit about my story and what the Recovery Project Foundation is all about, how it came to be, and how we can look ahead. So for me personally, I started struggling with my eating disorder when I was 16. It was actually very interesting for me to hear about Dr. Heather talk about all of the sports implications, and that I used to be a competitive swimmer. So I now kind of looking back, realizing, oh, maybe that had something to do with my thoughts. I ended up stopping right before I got an eating disorder. So maybe that's how that all came to be. I'm not sure. Definitely had an impact. But yeah, I started silently struggling with my eating disorder when I was 16. And from there kind of went through a lot, whether it was binge purging, restricting, that type of thing. I ended up telling someone and getting help fairly early on at a very kind of low point in the evening. It was really late at night. I remember like really distinctly. I was like super freaking out. I don't know why, just whirlwind of anxiety and everything. So I ended up, I think it was like 1 a.m. I ended up going and waking my mom up and being like, okay, I have a problem. I can't deal with this anymore. That type of thing. So yeah, I ended up telling her, and we did get immediate action done. That's for sure. We reached out to numerous people and my family doctor and kind of went from there. And yeah, I ended up getting on a long wait list for a publicly funded center, which I ended up getting into a couple months later. I think at the time it was about a 5-month wait. So I was kind of seeing a couple people here and there when I was 16, and then I just turned 17. So just seeing like a couple people here and there to like in the time being, and then ended up getting into the publicly funded program. And that was kind of like a massive wake up call for myself and everyone in my family and who knew about what was going on, which weren't too many people. I kind of was, and still am, finding like a hard time talking openly about my recovery. So I'm really happy to be here and be able to do that. It's kind of a big step for me in where I am. So I'm happy to be able to share. And then, so yeah, I got started in the publicly funded treatment center, and it was not for me, all about the number on the scale. I found everyone was everyone was treated the same. All the patients were the same. I was in an outpatient program, and it just ended up causing, like, rather than everyone around me being a support system, it kind of made everything around me seem like they were against me and against what I was going through. So that was kind of a very hard time for myself and my family, but it did help with the foundational stuff of physical health, but nothing got better in terms of mental health. So then I was there for a couple of months when COVID hit, and then I was about to turn 18 in July. So they just discharged me in March, right when COVID hit. No resources, no recommendations, nothing. So I was like okay, well, I guess I'm better now because they don't think I'm sick enough to need help anymore. It looks like I'm good. I can just go on now. So I was really happy about that at first, and then went on with my life. Was a bit better for sure. And then in probably the beginning of university, so like it was October, September, I ended up kind of relapsing a couple of months, and then found that I couldn't get help anywhere quickly, which is what we wanted. There was no you can get in right away, and especially with COVID, there was nothing you can just show up somewhere, and it was a mess. So we ended up just through connections finding the Kyla Fox Center, which I am a huge supporter of, and I love Kyla's center. It is amazing. It was exactly what I needed, and it was great. The only thing that makes it not so great is that it's a private care system. So I was very fortunate to be able to afford this type of programming. We emailed the first day, and then the next day right after, I was seeing 3 different specialists that helped with all different aspects of how to help me with my eating disorder and what I was going through, and everything about me. It was all tailored to me. So it was just an amazing experience and really impactful for my recovery. And I would not be able to be here without that center and kind of the opportunity I had. So I've been working with Kyla and her center for, I would say, about a year. And then tail end of my recovery, doing a lot better and everything. And I remember this is another very distinct thought we had one day with my mom and I were driving in the car, and I had finished first year university, and we were just driving, and she was like, we were just reminiscing on how far I had come in my recovery throughout that year since seeing Kyla, and how great that type of programming was. And then we're like, we're really lucky we got that. We're so lucky we got involved in that program. And, it's not really a lot of people don't have that opportunity, and they're definitely either worse off or in the same position that I was. So we were like, oh, we should do something. And then we kind of threw it out there. Wasn't really sure if we were going to go anywhere with it, but we did. I decided to reach out to a charity law firm, and they helped me send in an application to the CRA, and we ended up getting approved in December, so just a couple of months ago, and we officially launched on January 25th. So what we do is we provide funding for those suffering and struggling with eating disorders, so they can go to a private care center of their choosing and get help that way. So it's completely up to you and up to whoever's applying for the grant, where they would like to go. We do have a full process that you can learn more about on our website for details about that, but it's all through donations, and it's been really successful so far. We're coming up on 6 months since our launch date, and we've had over 20 applicants, which was kind of my biggest fear at first, was what if no one even sees this? What if we're putting it out there and it's a complete flop? But it's been great. It's been amazing for my healing as well. As I mentioned before, I've always been one to kind of be quiet about my recovery and my story, but I think deciding to launch this was a huge step in my recovery, and kind of opened the doors to being a part of this amazing community that I didn't even know was out there. It's so great to be able to talk about my experiences and be able to help people who are struggling kind of the way that I did. So we formulated throughout the couple of months. I don't know why I thought I could handle this whole foundation on my own, but for some reason I thought I would be able to do that. We got a whole team of volunteers helping out. We have an outreach team that helps with donations, that helps with social media, and that helps with our events that kind of bring us all together every month or so, to kind of show that community aspect, as well as raising awareness. We want to be able, as well as raising money, we want to be able to raise awareness and form a community with each other. So that's kind of one of our big important things as well. And then we've been, so I've been expanding the team throughout the past couple of months, and we've been reaching out to various centers across Canada. We're collaborating with centers all the way out in Alberta, and we've reached some grant applicants all the way out east as well in Halifax. So it's just been like astonishing to see that we can fulfill the kind of gap between public and private care in this way. And it's just been a great experience. And already we've come across a lot of people who are interested in getting involved, and they're kind of in the similar position. And in fact, most of the people on the team have had a similar story to mine. Whether or not they were able to get private care at the time varied, but they were like, oh, if this was around when, I don't know, X amount of years ago, this would have been a game changer for me in my recovery. So it's been really touching to hear that. And then it's also great to see them get involved and talk about how being a part of the recovery project has been so beneficial for them and their recovery. So I am really honored that I was invited to speak among everybody here today. Everyone is super amazing. And if you would like to find out more information about the Recovery Project Foundation, we do have a website, so you can look it up. And we are also tagged on NIED's latest posts about this event. So thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. As someone who themselves sought treatment through the public sphere, I fully 100% understand the importance of funding private care. And I'm so thankful for the work and the advocacy that your organization is doing. So from a personal place, thank you so much. And then for our next presentation, we have a group of lovely ladies from Dr. Jennifer Couturier's Pediatric Eating Disorders Research Lab at Mcmaster University in Hamilton. Sadaf, Laura, Maria, and Danielle will be sharing what motivated them to become involved in eating disorder research and how working in academia leads to tangible change.
Hi, welcome to Dr. Jennifer Couturier's Pediatric Eating Disorder Research Lab from Mcmaster University. Our team includes 4 members, and today our goal is to share why we chose to get involved in eating disorder research. So starting with myself, I'm Sadaf, a research assistant at Mcmaster Children's Hospital. I have been involved in eating disorder research since last 3.5 years with Dr. Jennifer Couturier. So what motivated me towards working in the field of eating disorders? It all started when I was working as a pediatric medicine resident in Pakistan. So while working in the hospital, I used to see lots of children with underlying psychiatric illnesses, and unfortunately, they were misdiagnosed and treated for other illnesses. And among them, the highest ratio was of eating disorders, which were overlooked. For example, many children were treated for iron deficiency anemia or malnourishment, yet they had an underlying eating disorders and ultimately suffered from complications due to not receiving appropriate treatment for eating disorders. In my opinion, it was due to the lack of awareness about eating disorders and shortage of doctors specializing in this field, which is a worldwide issue. Due to the lack of awareness and resources for eating disorders, many individuals living with these conditions don't get the help they need. So that motivated me to pursue my career in the field of eating disorder and try to fill in the gaps. When I joined Dr. Couturier's research team at Mcmaster, it further enhanced my interest in research related to eating disorders. Awareness can lead to prevention, early diagnosis, and treatment. And I think that clinical research is one of the best approaches to generate knowledge and awareness that can enable us to combat eating disorders and their unforgiving consequences in children and youth. Increased awareness and empathy for persons who are battling with eating disorders can also help to reduce the stigma typically connected with these mental diseases. In the end, I just want to say that try to get involved in the field of eating disorders in any way you can, and focus on spreading awareness, hope, and education to individuals and families living with the impact of eating disorders so that you can make a difference in their lives. On that note, I just want to thank you all, and I would like to invite my next colleague, Laura, for sharing her experience.
Thank you so much, Sadaf. So my name's Laura, and I'm a research assistant at Mcmaster University. So growing up, I had friends who had eating disorders, but I didn't realize the full extent of the illness, and I didn't understand what was happening to my friends. I wanted to learn more about eating disorders and became aware of the significant impact they have on those who struggle, as well as their friends and family. So in my second year of university, I was presented with an opportunity to start volunteering in the eating disorder program at Mcmaster Children's Hospital. Many of the patients there were incredibly intelligent, kind, and caring, but were battling a difficult illness that remains highly stigmatized. It was clear that stigma and shame from others was not helping and in fact hindered many individuals' recovery process. This led me to do more research on eating disorders, and I realized that there is a significant need for more resources and research in this field. Being able to contribute as a research assistant has been very fulfilling, and I look forward to driving further change in this field in a clinical capacity in the future, as I'm currently completing my master's in psychotherapy at Mcmaster University. I encourage everyone to get involved in causes that support eating disorder awareness through volunteering, research, or in a clinical capacity. Learning about the illness, how to support those struggling, and educating others to decrease the stigma is helpful and can make a life-changing impact on individuals. Thank you. I'd like to now pass it off to my colleague, Maria.
Thank you so much, Laura. Hi, everyone. My name is Marina Kula, and I've been Dr. Couturier's graduate student in Mcmaster's Health Research Methods program since September 2020. I'm finishing up my master's degree in the next few months, and I'm continuing into my PhD this September. Along with the others on the team, I've been exposed to several projects working with Canadian youth, parents, and clinicians from the eating disorders field. As for my personal journey getting here, I previously thought that the only way to work in the field of mental health more generally was to work directly with people as a therapist, as a clinical psychologist, or otherwise. But through different research opportunities at the end of my undergrad degree and afterwards, I learned that research has had and continues to have a huge influence on whatever clinical field you find yourself in, including that of eating disorders. Research is a great option for those interested in strengthening the evidence base surrounding eating disorders, whether it's understanding the causes behind them or how they develop, improving upon ways to diagnose, treat, or prevent them, all of which play a big role in affecting policy and practice. Youth and families have provided us with feedback that they feel heard, and reflecting on their experiences has been helpful, whether it's through a questionnaire or a survey, or more in-depth interviews or focus groups. Lastly, we can never have too much passion and motivation in eating disorders research. So if you're considering one of multiple ways of getting involved in mental health, know that research is a very valuable, productive, and rewarding avenue to do this in. There's still so much research, work, and exploration needed to ensure that eating disorders are equitably addressed with them everywhere, of all sizes, genders, backgrounds, cultures, levels of income, countries, and more. Thank you so much, and now I will pass it along to Danielle.
Okay, thank you so much, Maria. So my name is Danielle, and I'm a research coordinator on Dr. Jennifer Couturier's lab and with this team. So just a little bit about my perspective and how I kind of got into this field of research. So when I was a child, I unfortunately had to watch a family member struggle with anorexia nervosa. And being very young and naive, I stayed silent and pretty much just accepted these behaviors as normal. Still something that I feel really badly about to this day. Similarly, my family ignored it, and we all just kind of assumed it was just a phase and something that might pass, hopefully quickly. But over time, it became highly apparent that this was serious, and without treatment, this member of our family was going to die. The treatment process was very difficult for all members of my family, and I quickly realized that I would not wish this illness or situation upon anyone. We were very fortunate that this member of our family did make a full recovery, although it was not easy. So as I grew older and started to learn a little bit more about mental health research and just eating disorders in general, I became interested in pursuing a career in eating disorders. And basically, even just as cliche as it sounds, it was because I wanted to do my best to make a difference in the lives of those who are struggling or affected with eating disorders. Research is a really interesting way to do this, as it can involve testing unique and novel interventions, aiming to improve healthcare systems and services, and therefore benefiting at a population level rather than at an individual level, and overall helping more people than just one or two people. Working in this lab, we have been able to directly interact with patients and their families and provide them with opportunities to not only test interventions, but to also give feedback so that we can make services better for them and for others in the future. So this includes conducting focus groups and interviews, as Maria had mentioned, where we're allowing participants to speak freely about the study and the intervention so that their voice can be heard, and this data can be analyzed and applied to making real change in the eating disorder field. So with all that being said, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to all of our perspectives about why we got involved in research in this field. But in addition to working in research, being a research participant is also very valuable and rewarding, given that eating disorders are not as well studied as other areas of mental health. So at this time, I'm going to ask you to refer to the slide that hopefully should be appearing on the screen. So if, I know it was a lot of information you heard from 4 different people about all of their perspectives in being in research, but if you were interested in learning a little bit more about anything that we said today or about our current research projects and even ways to get involved as a research participant, please visit our Twitter page, which can be found at @Couturier Lab, or you can email me when my email should be on the screen, and it's pellegdm@mcmaster.ca. In terms of research opportunities that we have right now for a participant, we're actually currently recruiting for individuals with lived experience or expertise in eating disorders to share how the pandemic has impacted eating disorders, as well as to talk about some potential mitigating strategies like peer support. But this slide also features some of our recent publications in other areas of eating disorders. So I would invite you at a later time to visit these pages to learn more about what we have studied in the past and how this can impact the field of eating disorders in the future. So thank you so much again for listening to our presentation. And like I mentioned, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to follow us on Twitter for more information. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. And I agree with Danielle. If you want to learn more, get involved, have any questions, definitely reach out to her, because it's without research, we can't move forward with intervention and other ways of helping people. So next up, we'll have Nicole introducing our next presenters. Thanks, Claire. Our next presenters are from NIED, the National Eating Disorder Information Center. NIED provides information, resources, referrals, and support to Canadians affected by eating disorders and has both a telephone number and an online chat that those in need can access. Please join me in welcoming Ari Maharaj and Jennifer Lee, who facilitate NIED's community education programs in schools and communities across Canada, along with resources that have been co-created with youth members.
Hi, everyone, and thanks to NIED, Nicole, and the entire team at NIED for hosting this event. We're really honored to get to share this space with everyone here today. My name's Ari, I use he, him pronouns, and you've gotten to hear a little bit about what NIED does, our helpline, our chat, some of our resources, and today we're going to focus in on some of the community education work that we do. For me, as NIED's Outreach and Education Coordinator, it's super important, and also from the ways in which I have lived experience of my own mental health issues. While it's not of an eating disorder, I think we know very well that many people who have eating disorders also don't struggle with that in isolation. And for me, when I was in high school, while I've seen some progress being made on the ways in which we talk about mental health, I think I still see so many fault lines and things going on in the world, such as war, transphobia, COVID-19, that continue to impact those most vulnerable and the unique ways that these systemic issues can impact people's body image and eating. I see my role as a community educator as bringing conversations to youth on the ground because I think they're ready and willing for it, and I know I was. And I'm lucky to be joined here by my colleague, Jen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jen, and I use she, her pronouns. I am a community engagement facilitator at the National Eating Disorder Information Center and also a Master's of Social Work student. Community engagement is important to me because mental health was really rarely ever spoken about in schools, for me, growing up at least. And, maybe there was a one-off presentation on depression or anxiety. However, it was nothing really kind of beyond that. And there was no discussion of social justice issues or identity and how that interacts with the development of an eating disorder, particularly the development of my eating disorder. My queerness and Asianness played a role, but I wasn't able to discover that until my early 20s. And I think that's why community education is so important to me, to let young ones know, and the adults around them know, that eating disorders and mental health issues are not a pathology within human functioning, but also a more so a systemic issue that happens within our society.
On this slide, you see a snapshot of our community education page, and our programming usually reaches around 20,000 folks a year. Today, while you see other things on here, we're going to be focusing on our programming that are available to youth, both in schools and in post-secondary, in person if you're in the Greater Toronto area, and virtually across the country. In our elementary, middle, and high schools, we take what's called a whole school approach to eating disorder prevention. And what this means is that for students in classroom, we get to be there in presentations where we talk about some of the factors that put people at risk for developing eating disorder, such as being dissatisfied with your body, having trouble being critical thinkers about the messages we see in the media, feeling isolated and alone, and maybe being rigid with our beliefs around eating and movement. For educators and school support staff, we deliver capacity building workshops to help them learn strategies for supporting students in need and acquire classroom tools to talk about mental health in their curriculum. And finally, we partner with local parent councils to host virtual evenings for families with 4 panelists, including folks with lived experience, clinicians, and parents, sharing their experiences with those in attendance so they can learn about ways to support their loved ones. All of this programming, especially the ones to youth, are available for free. And it's something we're really honored to be able to facilitate, because I think all of these folks are ready for this conversation. Let's talk a little bit about what this actually looks like in practice, really focusing in on these presentations that we do directly to students. So with elementary school students, we focus on building a community that's accepting and inclusive of all bodies while treating everyone with respect. For me, when I was in high school struggling in silence, I felt like I was isolated, I felt ashamed, and I kind of felt the effects of this like gray cloud that we call stigma. We talk a lot about it, but sometimes it's really hard to think about what it means. And to me, what it meant was the emotions that it made me feel, feeling like I was alone, that I was the only one going through it, and feeling really separate from everyone else. In our presentations, you can see that we try to counter that. On the left, you see a picture of our team member, Jen Tello, working with students who are creating a puzzle with their classmates. They each have one puzzle piece, and they write a strength about themselves while decorating it. Then they put all the pieces together with their table mates to see how all their strengths work together as a team. On the right, you can see a picture of our team member, Calvin, in the red. In this activity, students are asked to take a different colored leaf and write something that they like about their partner that has nothing to do with their body. They then go and present it to them, and they go together to stick it up on the branches that we have pasted on the walls around them. And they stick the branches on the tree, and their whole classroom can fill the tree. And this can serve as a reminder for the rest of the school year. In both of these examples, we're focused on building community care, where we can celebrate our differences and recognize the power in our shared values around acceptance and body inclusion.
So we know that eating disorders have an early age of onset, with risk increasing in and around puberty. So from middle school, which is in the left picture, we're engaging the students in media literacy, getting them to critically analyze the images they see, the messages they hear, and how it makes them feel about themselves and the folks around them. Here is Calvin again, and he's helping students compare a before and after picture to see how companies manipulate their images in order to sell certain products. And in high school, which is on the right, our sessions are mostly focused on diet culture as a system of beliefs that worship certain appearance ideals. We're debunking mythologies with students through discussion. and talking about ways we can reject diet culture in person and online. And so here we have Jen again, and she's brainstorming with students what we gain and what we lose when we engage with diet culture. For me personally, I developed my eating disorder around the age of 11, but it kind of perpetuated and exacerbated in high school just because we weren't given any intervention or prevention then. And I went to a high school that was a performing arts high school and with a major in dance. And so teachers constantly told us to suck in our lunches or to avoid eating in general in order to maintain the standard of thinness, which is an impossible standard at that. And for 4 years, every day, we would look at ourselves in the mirror and critique our bodies, not just for its aesthetic, but its functionality as well. And not once was there a presentation or a lesson or a discussion on weight stigma, eating disorders, diet culture. And I think if NEDIC or an adult or a community group had came and intervened or talked about prevention and discussed these things, it would have saved my classmates and me a lot of suffering and a lot of thinking that we weren't enough. And then when students graduate from high school and potentially move on to post-secondary, we have 2 presentations that we've been delivering across the country for the last 3 years. So on the left is spotting the signs and supporting someone affected. And this helps students, folks working in student services like athletics, recreation, residents, to recognize, reflect, respond, and refer, which is our 4 R's, to help people on their campuses struggling with their eating or body image. The second presentation we have for post-secondary is navigating pathways to care for eating disorders in Canada, or more specifically Ontario. And so this is more geared towards campus health, like nurses, dietitians, or mental health staff, social workers, psychotherapists, psychologists, to increase or upskill their knowledges surrounding eating disorders and to gain confidence in providing initial supports and referrals. I started with NEDIC as a post-secondary student through X University, or now known as Toronto Metropolitan University, and being able to lead Spark presentations as a, as a student really kind of helped me gain hope in that there were organizations that were actively trying to support its community members, giving them what they need, especially in the context that we're living in right now, because society can be really tough to navigate as a young person.
One of the other ways that we involve folks with lived experience is in the writing and co-creation of our resources. Here on the screen, you'll see a quote that's from AP, one of the writers of our 2S LGBTQ+ resource. And to me, it's really important that we're doing this presentation today on June 2nd in a month of Pride, knowing that many of the ways in which when Pride was formed and what people were fighting for and the original connotations of body positivity, the ways in which it was tied with anti-fatness, the ways in which this was tied with body liberation, the way this was tied with justice, are all perspectives that we don't often see in modern eating disorder treatment. You can see here AP share. I grew up in a small community where 2S LGBTQ+ was not an acronym I ever heard, let alone the term non-binary. Being a queer and non-binary person, I felt alone for so long, thinking that I was the only one struggling with my gender, my sexuality, and its impacts on my body. It wasn't until I was able to reach out online that I could find community and belonging. This support helped me through difficult transitions in my youth, where I needed the understanding of someone who could relate. Even when I eventually moved, these online connections reminded me that even if my current situation wasn't the best, someone out there understood me and what I was going through, and this created possibility for my journey, both in my queer identity and in my eating disorder recovery. To me, what this quote speaks to is what we need to see more of in folks' eating disorder journeys, and in the way in which we co-create resources with communities. In this resource released last year, we had folks with lived experience, some of them youth, who got to put their own voice to this resource that now lives on that webpage, nedic.ca/2slgbtq, for other folks to read, for ways in which treatment professionals can read, for which in which parents and loved ones can read. Later on, we're going to be engaging in a similar process to co-create resources with and for people of color, led by NEDIC team members who are people of color, wanting to involve people in the community who are folks of color. In particular, Indigenous people are going to be represented here too. And what's important to us in the way in which we currently conceive reconciliation is making sure that nothing without us, nothing for us without us, and making sure that Indigenous people are also going to be included in conversation about healthcare resources for other people to be included in that too. If folks want to potentially lend their perspective to this resource, please keep an eye out on our social media channels and website later in June for an expression of interest form, and you can fill that out and be included.
So essentially, after a presentation or reading a resource maybe on our website, what's really awesome is that we can connect with you all through our direct client services, where we have a nationwide toll-free helpline and chat service, where if someone has a question after a presentation or maybe a concern or something they want to debrief or even wants one-on-one immediate support, they can be in touch with one of our trained support workers. And we also have a 700+ service provider directory that actually, if you input your postal code, pulls up all of the service providers specializing in eating disorders within your area. And in post-secondary, my mother actually used this NEDIC's direct client service in order to kind of help me. And they directed her to services within the GTA, one of them being a service provider who created a really positive and meaningful impact in my recovery journey. And, you know, as first-generation immigrants, they were unaware of these existing mental health supports and services and, you know, let alone eating disorder-specific services. And so with community outreach, we can direct more folks, parents, guardians, teachers, coaches to our pre-existing services and resources. Lastly, if you want to get involved with NEDIC as a volunteer or student, we have included the link at the very bottom of this slide. So it's nedic.ca/volunteer-opportunities. If you want to check that out, that'd be really cool. But that's the end of our presentation, and we hope that this was helpful and fruitful for you all, and we hope to connect with some of you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ari and Jennifer, for sharing how NEDIC's ongoing educational programming is distributed across the country. If you, the audience, are curious or wish to learn more about the information and resources offered by NEDIC, you can visit their website at nedic.ca or call the toll-free number. And now that we've gone through a few more presentations, we're going to take a pause for a moment and encourage everybody to stretch, take a walk, clear their heads, because 2 hours is a super long time to be sitting down. So do some movement. And then once you're finished that activity, why not jump into the chat box and let us know which presentation has stuck out to you? Are there any organizations that you're just finding out about now and are interested in learning more about? Let's show them some love and let them know that they're all doing an amazing job here tonight. I know personally, like before coming and joining NIED, I just was so unaware of this whole world and all the different organizations that can come together and have each such tailored like responses and like support. Like for example, the fact that NEDIC, you guys are able to target each like level of education from like kids to post-secondary is really amazing. And yeah, like there's just so many things that I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that was out there. And for me personally, like I find just in general, the wider public doesn't get to hear about all this amazing work, which is such a shame because so many people are dealing with eating disorders and need help and they want that advocacy. So to see everybody tonight come together and to hopefully work together to come change the whole system. I hope for one, everyone here who's participating is loving this little community that we have, but two, I'm hoping that it's pushing the audience to get more involved and raise more awareness and to speak to more people about disorders and mental health and the treatment options that are there and the work that still needs to be done to push that forward. Yeah. There's just so much youth involvement as well. Like, for example, like Sarah, you said you're a university student. That's amazing. I'm a university student. Like, what have I done? Like, I think it's amazing. It's phenomenal. Okay, well, I guess we'll jump back into the presentations. now that everyone's had a little bit of a break, some movement. Up next, we're actually going to be, speaking of universities, so we're going to be speaking to a number of representatives from the University of Guelph. We're going to be welcoming Lindsay O'Reilly, Madison Hughes, and Emma Hackebeck. Lindsay, a registered dietitian, will also be speaking on behalf of the Waterloo Wellington Eating Disorder Coalition. The WWEDC works to provide hope for those dealing with eating disorders by engaging with local stakeholders and providing educational opportunities for those wishing to learn more about eating disorders. And Madison and Emma will be sharing their efforts that they and others at the University of Guelph have made to ensure that those dealing with eating disorders on campus have access to the support and resources they need. So take it away, ladies.
Thanks, Nicole. As Nicole mentioned, my name is Lindsay O'Reilly, and I'm a registered dietitian at Student Wellness Services at the University of Guelph, and I'm also a member of the Waterloo Wellington Eating Disorders Coalition. If there are any nutrition students in the audience, you'll likely know that traditional nutrition education doesn't provide students with a lot of knowledge or tools around eating disorder education and prevention. In fact, traditional nutrition education can actually be pretty counterproductive when it comes to eating disorder support or recovery. Often some of the science-based things that you're required to learn reduce food and health to calories and weight. And if I'm being totally honest, I truly didn't realize how harmful a traditional approach to nutrition was until I began to practice as a dietitian. I feel really lucky that I had some wonderful mentors early in my career that helped me learn about and embrace a health at every size approach. Through my work at Student Wellness Services and through my work on the coalition, I try to positively contribute to the dialogue that individuals have about food. Essentially, my goal is to try to provide education that folks can use to drown out the restrictive and fat-phobic nutrition noise that we're surrounded by. So I just want to briefly share a few ideas that I had for how you might shape your own nutrition education or how you might get involved in your community. If you're a nutrition student joining in today, one thing I would encourage you to do is to consider taking counseling skills courses as electives as much as possible. I remember when I was completing my undergrad degree, I had to take one communication and counseling skills class. And at the time, I really didn't understand why nutrition students needed to take this course or how it would be useful to me. But little did I know that this would actually come to be one of the most important courses of my undergrad. I use the skills that I learned in that class daily when I'm having conversations with folks about food and the emotions tied to food. A second idea is to advocate on your campus. A lot of nutrition degrees have what's called a selected topics class that you can take in your fourth year, and the topics that are offered rotate every year. So I would encourage you to speak to your profs and request courses that teach about health at every size approach or about eating disorder education and support. A third suggestion is to read and listen to dietitians who practice from a health at every size approach. There are lots of really great dietitians doing wonderful work. One suggestion is to listen to Christy Harrison. She has a podcast called Food Psych, as well as a number of great books. A fourth suggestion is to get involved in your community. Many communities or provinces have organizations that provide education and awareness on the prevention of eating disorders. We're really lucky in the Waterloo Wellington community to have the Waterloo Wellington Eating Disorders Coalition. Our name is a little bit of a mouthful, but the coalition aims to have a social media presence that provides folks with an alternative way to think about food in their bodies. Our coalition runs several events every year aimed at providing education and raising awareness. So this can include professional workshops for clinicians, as well as our longest standing event called Faces of Recovery. Faces of Recovery is an annual event where 3 or 4 individuals speak about their recovery journey. We're always looking for individuals willing to speak at Faces of Recovery or individuals who would like to contribute to our blogs or social media so that we can highlight as many diverse stories as possible. And then my last suggestion is to get involved on your campus. So I'm going to pass it over to 2 really awesome University of Guelph students. Madison will speak first, and then she'll pass it over to Emma. And they're going to speak about how they got involved and made a difference on our University of Guelph campus. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Madison, and I am the co-president and co-founder of a new club at the University of Guelph called the Eating Disorder Awareness Society. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about why myself and my co-president, Catherine, founded the club, what starting a new club at the University of Guelph entails, and what we do as a club. So firstly, the University of Guelph already has a ton of great resources for eating disorders and mental health in general. They have lots of options run by professionals in the field, but we really wanted to create a space for students who aren't professionals, but maybe are interested in becoming an advocate and connecting with other like-minded students. As many of us know, when someone is struggling with an eating disorder, it can feel like no one in the world understands what you're going through. And we really wanted to create a community where you can be surrounded by people who know what you're feeling or can empathize with it. But rather than it being a treatment group, it's more so an environment where we're looking to implement positive change on our campus and in our community. I think having a student-run group like ours really opens up the conversation about eating disorders among peers, helping students to recognize the signs in their friends, and hopefully preventing people from suffering in silence. And I think starting a club like this would be a great asset to a university that maybe doesn't have as many resources as the University of Guelph does, could sort of serve as a starting point for accessing treatment and resources. So all official clubs at the University of Guelph are accredited by the Central Student Association. And in order to get accredited, you need a few things. The first main thing you need is 25 members. So being that it was just myself and my co-founder, Catherine, we really had to go out of our comfort zone to reach out to people, start sharing on social media, that type of thing, in order to get enough students to sign up to even apply to be accredited. We actually tried in one semester and we didn't have enough members. So we kept trying, kept talking to people, reaching out, and just this past semester, we reached the number of members we needed, and our accreditation was approved, which was super exciting, and we've since grown to about 50 members, which is awesome. We've had a great turnout at some of our events this past semester. We had one where we invited our members to share their favorite self-care or mental health related apps, podcasts, activities, etc. And another one where during exam season, we had a booth to hand out free snacks and buttons with sort of eating disorder recovery related phrases and graphics. And we've had some really positive feedback about those events that we've held so far. I think what this experience has taught me most is that if you're passionate about starting something or getting involved in something, but maybe don't know how to go about doing it, I would say to put aside any self-consciousness and reach out to people, ask questions, and put yourself outside your comfort zone. This whole thing just started with me emailing people that I didn't know and saying, I have a club that I want to get accredited. How do I do that? And it was definitely uncomfortable at first, especially because the club was mental health related, so it wasn't easy to reach out to peers and ask them to join this club that I was starting. But I am really, really glad that I did, because in just a little short time, I have been able to see the impact that we can have on campus. We've gotten great feedback from students, and being a part of this club has connected me with some pretty amazing people that I might not otherwise have met. And that's everything from me. If you have any questions, you can email us at edas@uoguelph.ca or follow us on Instagram. We would be happy to answer any of your questions there. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Madison. So I'm Emma. I use she, her pronouns. And for the past 2 years, I was a peer helper at the Wellness Center at the University of Guelph, and now I'm a body project facilitator. So I'm just going to share a bit about myself and how I got involved in this area. So I was born in Hungary, but my childhood was spread out across Russia, Germany, and Ukraine. And growing up in these places, it was very easy to feel cut off from the world around me. Many of our speakers have talked about stigma, and this is something that I definitely felt growing up. I don't recall ever having mental health mentioned to me during my childhood. And it was only when I moved to Canada in 2017 when I discovered these conversations and how incredible it is to step into a helping well and volunteer position. So volunteering came into my life very suddenly, but ever since that did, it has been second nature to look for places to help everywhere. I began at Guelph in 2019, And in addition to quickly discovering the many Instagrams of clubs across campus, I also became familiar with our student experience portal and our volunteer connections department. And these two things are a goldmine of opportunities for getting involved. So whatever school you go to, set some time aside and look through the websites and thousands of subpages, sign up for newsletters, follow suggestions on Instagram, and just become familiar with the departments and resources which exist, because you might stumble across something great. For me, the something great was a call for peer helper volunteers at the Wellness Center. And I was a peer helper for 4 semesters. And thanks to the pandemic, I was only able to do this virtually. But during those 2 years, I never felt alienated. I just felt grounded and I felt helpful. And I knew the work I was producing was helping hundreds of other university students the same way, who were also struggling with their own mental health and pandemic life. And then in my 3rd semester as a volunteer, I heard about the Body Project through my supervisor, Rebecca. The Body Project is a workshop that aims to promote positive body image and self-acceptance. And I was raised in a way that we didn't really discuss these things, so I was very hesitant to participate even though I wanted to. So I talked to some other peer helpers who had attended and heard about their experiences to get more comfortable with the idea. So again, I have always been very reluctant to talk about conversations about body image and stuff like that, and even more hesitant to actively invite people into conversations about my own. But in my 21 years of life, up until that point and the months leading to now, I have never felt a space be so safe and secure as the Body Project. And I went from having no conversations like this to having my own training to become a facilitator a few weekends ago. So my role as a peer helper showed me that with some time and with some passion, I can make a difference in the lives of others. Both the Wellness Center and the Body Project provide me with a space to explore a variety of topics and how I can help. But most importantly, they are a safe space where I can entertain ideas outside of my comfort zone, as well as things that I never knew growing up. So in the end, I just want to do for others what these roles have done for me. So I encourage you to do the same. Look at flyers around campus, attend events like this, talk to your friends, apply for anything that interests you, and look for something great to be a part of, because you could make a really big difference. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. And a question to everyone in the audience. Does your school have a wellness center or a place where students can turn to if they need some support? If not, 100% advocate for one, because we can guarantee that there are those on campus who will be forever thankful to gain access to such a resource that will be open not just to them, but everybody else at the school. So for our next presentation, we have Emma Stafford and Annie Thakur speaking to us about the Reachout Center for Kids, better known as ROC, and the new mentality, providing client and family-centered services to the Halton region for around 40 years. ROC was designated in 2014 as the area's lead agency by the Ministry of Child and Youth Services. The New Mentality is a not-for-profit network of youth advocates and adult allies who are working together to change how people perceive mental health. By amplifying the youth voice, the New Mentality hopes to create change from within the mental health system. So join me in welcoming Emma and Annie.
Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for having us this evening. Myself and Annie work with the New Mentality and ROC, and we're really excited to share what the mentality is all about and how you can potentially become involved in this as well. So we're just going to start off with some introductions just so you can get to know us a little better and know where we're coming from.
Hi, so my name is Annie. My pronouns are she and her, and my role at the New Mentality of Halton is as the lead youth facilitator. So my role looks like a lot of planning and organizing our group projects and kind of guiding the team through our meetings.
And my name is Emmy, and my pronouns are she and her, and I'm a targeted prevention worker at the Reachout Center for Kids. So a part of my role is to support Danielle's Place programs, which is a service that falls under ROC, and we provide targeted prevention services for eating disorders, primarily for youth between the ages of 8 to 17, as well as their families. A really unique component to my role with ROC is I also have the opportunity to work closely with the New Mentality Halton as an adult ally. So I'm just going to provide a brief explanation of ROC and the new mentality and just how we're connected. And then I'm going to pass it over to Annie, who can really showcase our work and share more about what her and her team of youth are doing with the new mentality, Halton. So ROC, which is the Reachout Center for Kids, is a large accredited mental health agency located in Halton, Ontario. And we currently offer over 30 programs and services to youth between the ages of 0 to 17, as well as their families. So we have 11 sites located across the Halton region, and this includes locations in Oakville, Burlington, Milton, as well as Halton Hills, so that would be Georgetown and Acton. We offer a full scope of services, which means that our services range from low intensity to high intensity based on the needs of the children and or the families that we're working with. So our prevention services would include programs such as Danielle's Place, which provides targeted prevention for eating disorders. We also have our general clinical services, which include programs such as our crisis response program and our virtual walk-in. And then we also have our specialized clinical services as well as our live-in treatment. So a little bit more about the new mentality. The new mentality is a provincial network of youth advocates and adult allies who work together to disable the label that surrounds mental health and mental illness. So the new mentality strives to create change within the mental health system and beyond by embedding and amplifying youth voice and also highlighting lived experience. So the New Mentality Network is made up of youth advocates who are primarily between the ages of 13 to 25, as well as adult allies who are from children and youth mental health agencies across Ontario. So there are various New Mentality chapters across Ontario, and ROC specifically works with the Halton chapter. So as an adult ally, I've learned a lot from this group. The New Mentality Halton has truly inspired and influenced the work that we do at ROC and Danielle's Place, as it really puts youth in the lead and prioritizes youth voice and also just provides them with a platform where they can share their stories related to mental health. So I'm going to pass it over to Annie, who can really share more about all about the Halton team and the incredible work that they do.
Thank you, Emmy. So at our Halton chapter at TNM, we're made up of 6 really dedicated youth, and we all collaborate on different projects each year. And we also take the opportunity to be able to raise awareness and share resources in our locality. And we also work along with our wonderful adult allies who really help in working alongside the youth leaders, and also they support us in any way throughout all of our meetings. All right, so I wanted to break up a little bit of the work that we do at TNM. One of our main projects is the podcast, the Youth Minds Matter podcast, and that's available on Spotify. And we're currently working on our 4th season. Then through social media, we also have a lot of advocacy. We mainly use our Instagram at TNM Halton. We're also, this year, we've been more involved with providing feedback to ROC. So when they have different new services or initiatives, we kind of provide our thoughts and what we think, and more of a youth perspective on services that would be catering to youth. And then I think one of our larger goals as an organization is also to generally create a positive space and foster a sense of community, and so that we're able to have a space where people are open to hearing everyone's ideas and their own experiences. All right, so I wanted to break up more of a podcast. So we started this project a few years back, and we enjoyed it so much that it became our annual focus. And as I mentioned earlier, we're currently working on our 4th season, and that's really exciting. And so every single year, how it works is that we focus on a specific subsection of mental health, because it's such a broad topic, and so we really narrow it down to specific focuses. So for example, in season 1, we talked a lot about coping with stress. And then season 2 was kind of sharing some and highlighting some resources and access to supports. And then our season last year, we touched on the topic of mental health and equity in different marginalized populations. And this year's is very connected to the current state of the pandemic that we experienced over the last 2 years, and kind of the shift in mental well-being and how the pandemic has impacted youth mental health. And that's just a little snapshot of the Spotify display page. So here's also a little picture of our TNM Instagram. And here we do a lot of other advocacy work. We really share anything from educational facts to do with mental health. We also spread awareness for different organizations and resources in our locality of Halton, and also sharing wellness tips and different podcast updates such as our releases. Okay, so I also wanted to talk about kind of how I became involved with this cause. So when I was growing up, having both of my parents as psychiatrists, mental health was always a very open discussion in our home. But as I began to grow up, I realized that that wasn't always the case, and that society often placed the discussion of mental health issues behind closed doors. And so that really made me gain interest in wanting to be involved and spreading awareness somehow. So then when my older brother became involved with TNM Halton, he would share about his nice experiences with the lovely community they had and the different projects and things that they worked on together. And so then later down the line, that kind of inspired me to join. And this year, so because I love the work that I saw taking place, I wanted to take more of a leadership role as a youth facilitator. Okay, and just to kind of sum up the main work that we do at TNM Halton, so we highlight a lot of lived experience through a podcast. Many of our listeners are youth who are going through similar experiences, so it helps them to feel a sense of support instead of feeling alone. We also contribute feedback to Rock and really amplify a youth perspective in mental health. And then finally, through our social media, that's another way that we amplify the youth voice and really just raise awareness.
So we also wanted to highlight some next steps and just some ways that you can become involved if you're someone who's listening today and you want to take the next step to maybe become part of the new mentality and have your own story shared or just connect with others. There's a couple different ways that you can connect. So a primary way could just be to, follow and engage with the New Mentality Halton on social media. You're able to follow the Halton chapter page. We'll share the Instagram at the end, as well as the provincial page, which will highlight any recruitment or training opportunities or any opportunities just to have your own experience highlighted as well. You can also find your own the New Mentality chapter in your area. So if you visit the New Mentality website, you'll notice that there's a tab which outlines the New Mentality group list. So there's various New Mentality chapters located across Ontario, and you'll be able to see if there's one in your area. So this is just a quick snapshot here. You see there's Thunder Bay, there's Peel Region, Huron and Perth County, Sault Ste. Marie, as well as many more. This is just an example of 4. And it also shows you who you can connect with as well if this is something that you're interested in. And I'm just going to pass it over to Annie just to share a little bit more about our Instagram.
Yeah, so just before we wrap this up, we kind of wanted to leave you with some ways to stay connected with our group. So we have our Instagram, that's our main social media platform. It's just at TNM Halton. And then Also, you can find our podcast on Spotify. So if you look up Youth Minds Matter or even just the new Mentality Halton, it should pop up. And we are planning to release that 4th season, hopefully in the upcoming months. So you can definitely kind of stay updated with that.
And then the last thing we just have here is an application link directly to the new Mentality Halton. You can apply on our ROC website, which is roconline.ca. The recruitment for the new Mentality Halton generally runs from July to September, so it's convenient timing, and I think that generally goes for the same for the other new Mentality chapters as well. But this is just the direct link for the new Mentality Halton page. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Annie and Emmy, for sharing this presentation on ROC and the new mentality. It's really amazing to see how youth are directly contributing to creating supportive content for other members in their cohort. So now we're going to take a minute to thank our sponsors of the Way Ahead event, Frame. Without them, we wouldn't be able to put on this amazing event for you guys tonight. As mentioned earlier in the evening, Frame is focused on system transformation for youth mental health services. We'd also like to highlight their Groundbreakers Network of youth and caregivers advocating to transform not only youth mental health system, but also around substance use as well.
I myself am a groundbreaker, and I can say from personal experience that it's made up of a wonderful group of individuals who are just as dedicated to changing the mental health care system as everyone here tonight is. And I would highly recommend joining the team, learning more about it, reaching out, because it's a truly amazing experience and you get a lot out of working with them.
Great, so now we are almost at the end of the event, and so for our last presentation, we are going to have Elise Trudell and Christina Takas from Body Brave. Body Brave was founded by Sonia Kumar Seguin and her mother, Dr. Karen Trellope, as a result of Sonia's own battle with an eating disorder. Unhappy with the barriers that they faced in navigating the healthcare system, the pair started Body Brave to help ensure no one else has to go through what they did in order to get Sonia the help that she needed. The organization offers a wide array of resources, including education for professionals in the healthcare field, as well as online treatment and support for those dealing with and looking to recover from an eating disorder. So please welcome Christina and Elise.
Hi. Thanks so much for joining us today. So I'll just go through some of our presentation. I'll introduce myself and then Christina. Okay, so firstly, I wear a lot of hats and always kind of have, and they've evolved to involve mostly mental health related things and then eventually eating disorders. So my name is Elise Trudell, or Elise Trudell if you are French. And can you see my screen? Okay, so as I was saying, my name is Elise, and basically I started studying at Western for medical sciences and then Mcmaster for a master's of occupational therapy. And it was at that time that I received my first diagnoses of basically every anxiety disorder in the book. So it was during that time that I really had that personal experience going through the mental health system through things like therapy, medication, and all the fun things. That's also when my passion for mental health advocacy started. So it was at that time that I became involved with some of the volunteer organizations that were happening, such as the Mental Health Alliance through the OT program and a few other positions. Since graduating there, I have been able to return to teach new OTs on topics such as navigating the mental health system. So it's been pretty incredible to kind of return there for several years now and now explain the importance of mental health in this profession where it might not always be the main focus or the main lens in which we look. I was also able to be a member of the Mental Health Commission of Canada's Youth Council from 2017 to 2022. And this Youth Council you know, there's no other way of saying it than it changed my life. It allowed me to meet so many incredible youth from across the country, as well as folks who were adults who were really paving the way for youth to have a voice and to be involved in projects. So really, when we talked about co-creation earlier, the commission, we just kept asking to be involved as early as possible in projects that they were doing, and we really had that opportunity a lot of the time. I was also the former program manager for Homewood Health Center's eating disorder program. So I did start out as an OT there and quickly just became so inspired and intrigued and interested in the work that eating disorder clinicians were doing, as well as the huge gap in services that existed, and wanting to feeling the need to do something more. So I did transition out of my role from the Homewoods program into the community, because I really saw that as the place that I could make an impact, and was able to work, create a position with the Hamilton Family Health Team as an eating disorder coordinator. So it's there that I'm able to support the family health team in building capacity for their over 270 clinicians to know a bit more about eating disorders and how to support all of the folks coming to them with this diagnosis. I'm also lucky to be a group facilitator with Body Brave, and really became aware of that organization in high school and undergrad when I started doing, Facebook fundraisers for this incredible organization that I found online. And now I get to do a weekly group with them, which is pretty incredible. And then just overall, here are some ways to get involved on the next slide here. So, okay, so first of all, the Youth Council. So the Youth Council is made up of about 12 youth, and youth is a different term these days. It means different ages, but for the Mental Health Commission, it is for folks under 25. And they're typically recruiting folks with lived experience with mental illness every few years. And it is a position that allows you to really, you know, travel across to different conferences, be involved in so many incredible projects, and in resources for knowledge translation. Another opportunity through the commission would be through the youth wellness hubs. So these are hubs across the country, again, that are really targeted for youth. I believe it's ages 11 to 25. And there are so many positions in terms of peer support, volunteer opportunities, and they have student ambassadors at many of the local high schools. There's also the Headstrong Summit, which can be an anti-stigma summit that you can hold in your own community through the commission. There's also so many incredible pieces that they've released in terms of a post-secondary and workplace mental health standard, that they have all the tools of how to apply this in your setting. And then finally, there are so many trainings and educations they put out, such as mental health first aid and Spark training. And then in terms of the clinical settings, there's so many different ways to get involved, but I would say the one that I seem to see most people is literally just messaging someone on LinkedIn that you see with an interesting job that you just want to know more about. See if you can shadow them, see how they got started, or see, you know, what is that journey there, because we all have a bit of a different journey in the clinical world that gets us into supporting folks with eating disorders. There's also many opportunities for student placements, which Christina will talk about with Body Brave. Create a position if there isn't a position for eating disorder support, and that's something you're really passionate about. Figure out if you can create that position within the organization. There's also so many volunteer opportunities, primarily in the clinical setting for eating disorders. It tends to be around things like meal support, but there's also some other ones that Christina will speak to with Body Brave.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina, and my pronouns are she, her. I am the online programming coordinator here at Body Brave. A little bit about me. I have a Bachelor of Social Work from Mcmaster University and a certificate in concurrent disorders from Mohawk. Growing up, I knew I wanted to work within the field of mental health, but I didn't know where to start. During my undergrad as well, we never really talked about specifically eating disorders when we had the conversation around mental health. It was actually during one of the guest speakers, Katie McRindle, who is a fat activist and counselor, that came to talk about Body Brave's work and her work in general. I was super fascinated and really just got hooked. I searched up Body Brave, went on their social media, and just fell in love with the organization, and somehow I was able to convince my field instructor to get me a placement at Body Brave, and so far they haven't got rid of me yet. So I've been with Body Brave for about a year or so now. But through this placement, while I was a student there, I found my passion working within the realm of eating disorders, and that's how I really got started. I was always really fascinated and interested in fact activism. And that's really just learn more through the placement and really just develop that love for it. During my time at Body Brave as well, I helped initiate the recovery support program with the team as a student, which we use to this day as well to provide clients our immediate low barrier support services. And currently as an online programming coordinator at Body Brave, I'm also given the title the Roomba because I like to help out with a little bit of everything and make sure everything's in check, specifically regarding programming. But I also work specifically with our Mohawk students. So I've supervised about 30 to 40 students. I've lost count by now, but they've all been such a wonderful impact to our organization and have done wonderful work, which I'll talk more about. But a little bit more about Body Brave. Hold on, let me just make sure I have that up. A little bit about Body Brave. Body Brave is a not-for-profit organization that provides accessible eating disorder treatment and support, as well as community training and education. As a result of COVID-19, it triggered a devastating surge in eating disorders across the country. So we actually made the switch to become 100% virtual and provide all of our care online as of March 2020. Body Brave focuses on lived experience. We use a health at every size approach and are weight inclusive and also proudly 2S LGBTQIA+ friendlies. Also happy Pride Month. We offer online self-guided support programming as well as group and individual treatment services, and all of our services are completely free of charge or covered by OHIP. So let's see, next slide. One thing about Body Brave, as you can see, is that we love our students. As a small charitable organization, we really rely on our strong connections with the students that come in, as well as our volunteers, to continuously learn, grow, and expand as an agency. So how to get involved? As being 100% virtual, it makes it easier to get involved. So the best way is through a school placement and volunteer opportunities, which you can learn more on our website. Body Brave also works with students from different university programs from both a clinical and non-clinical experience. So I think that's really important to highlight and mention, especially since, I think growing up, I was still kind of figuring out where and what I wanted to do growing up. And I think this gives you a really great opportunity of trying something new and seeing what you really are passionate about. Especially from my experience, that's how I figured it out, by just trying new things and just taking the step to do that. So some things that our students have been involved with, or you can be involved with as well, is having direct client experience. So we have a virtual care assistant role, VCA for short, that some of our students and volunteers help out with. This provides ongoing support with the client through their recovery journey. You're able to complete group work, administrative roles, developing educational handouts for our clients, as well as many other special projects. One in particular was a student-led project called the Missing Voices Project. And it was a study that focused on those with lived-in experience of an eating disorder, and also kind of with multiple marginalized identities, and seeing how the disparity showed through their eating disorders and the support that they were receiving. And that was student-led as well, like I mentioned. So meeting our placement students. So next I'd like to show you a video that some of our current and past placement students have created.
Hi everyone, my name's Brooke and I'm doing my student internship at Body Brave through Mohawk College's Mental Health and Disability Management program.
Hello, my name's Katrina.
My name is Layla.
Hi, my name is Haley and I'm currently a VCA at Body Brave and a student for the Mental Health and Disability Management program at Mohawk College.
I chose Body Brave for both personal and professional reasons. Throughout my years of education, I've noticed that there wasn't a lot of discussion around mental health and eating disorders, especially in high school, and I knew a lot of people who were struggling and we didn't know where to get help or what resources were out there.
I was a placement student and volunteer with Body Brave. I took on the role as a virtual care assistant, and there were so many learning experiences that I was able to have being a placement student with Body Brave.
Personally, I'm always looking to learn new things so that I can be more understanding as a person, as I've always wanted a career in helping others.
My role includes being a VCA, which is a virtual care assistant that helps to navigate electronic systems such as Input Health and Care Team in order to help solve any questions that a client may have. So far, my experience here at Body Brave has been very fulfilling, and I have gotten to learn more about eating disorders, as well as Body Brave's mission to help end the gap in eating disorder treatment, services, and education.
For example, I was able to do clinical intakes. I was able to co-facilitate during recovery sessions. I was able to help out with making resources and on the social media end of things. So there's so many things that you can learn to do at Body Brave. It's really just a matter of you asking.
I decided to become part of Body Brave because I wanted to learn more about eating disorders and how to help those struggling with their recovery. I've been able to help assist in creating information resources, assist clients in navigating treatment options, and even sit in on treatment groups with clients, all of which have opened my eyes to lived experiences with disordered eating. I have loved and valued my time at Body Brave so far and the experiences that I've had in helping those navigate help in their recovery.
My experiences at Body Brave so far has given me a sense of community and getting to work with a team that is passionate about helping others and educating as many people as they can. I've also learned how unique eating disorders are to each person, and there is still a lot of stigma around mental health and barriers to care, and there are organizations out there fighting to change that.
In terms of my best memories, I would really just have to say that it's the one-on-one experiences that you get to have with clients. It's a big passion of mine, and the Body Brave team has been really wonderful at helping me foster my skill set in being able to more effectively provide care to clients, and I'm really thankful for that.
I truly believe that you should become involved in this organization to learn more and help spread awareness about the growing concern of eating disorders and to become a part of a community dedicated to supportive growth and awareness.
So thank you for being a part of the conversation, and thank you for your time.
Other ways to get involved at Body Brave is through training and education. It is really important to stay informed around eating disorders, especially if if you have lived experience or even just starting to understand eating disorders. It's really great information to help develop your knowledge. We provide that at Body Brave. So I will provide you more contact information on our next slide. Support sessions. So we have both recovery sessions and workshops for clients. This happens 2 to 3 times a month, and we like to have panelists with lived experience of an eating disorder to get involved. So if you are someone you know would like to participate in this, we really encourage you to reach out to us. Some of the topics we have covered in the past is how to tell someone you have an eating disorder, dealing with diet culture, and body checking. Also, we have research at Body Brave, so we have collaborated with Mcmaster University to see the positive impact and general impact of our treatment groups on clients. That is something you can also get involved. The contact information is on the slides. Also, signing up for our newsletters, that's available on our website, bodybrave.ca. And that's towards the bottom of the initial page to stay tuned about all of the things that we do and also get you informed. Also donating or fundraising on Facebook, not only to Body Brave, but all the different organizations and folks who have contributed today for this presentation and event. it's a really great way to get involved and give back. Lastly, here's all the contact information regarding students. You can reach out to myself. So I put that email, training and education, research, general inquiries. If you have any questions but don't know where to go, you can go onto our website, bodybrave.ca, or email info@bodybrave.ca. And on social media, you can find us at Body Brave Canada. We post a lot of great informational content as well as some fun memes. Next, I will pass it off to Elise to finish us off.
Thanks so much, Christina, and thanks to everyone for joining us. Before we say our goodbyes, we just wanted to leave you with some overall recommendations. So from both of us, just I think start somewhere, anywhere, whether it be at your school, at your workplace, within your own family and friend group. Start somewhere in learning more or getting involved wherever you are, and consider things like what gets you excited, what skills and knowledge you have to offer. So whether it be clinical, non-clinical, art, creativity, whatever it is, kind of use that passion to fuel this passion, if you have it, for eating disorder support and advocacy. And then remembering that lived experience is very valuable experience. So just thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to NIED for having us. And I believe we will hear some closing remarks from Lauren Bernstein.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending this evening's event, The Way Ahead. Claire and Nicole, your moderating skills are superb. We are indeed fortunate to have such wonderful volunteers. My name is Lauren Bernstein. I have decades of lived experience, and I find myself today privileged to serve as the NIED chair. I represent a most talented and passionate group of volunteers and board leadership dedicated to be a catalyst for change, working towards a realization of the NIED vision to ensure that Canadians impacted by eating disorders receive the care they need and so richly deserve. Successful events happen when like-minded people come together to make them happen, and when guided by strong leadership. We need look no further than to Lynn Koss, NIED co-founder and the original Ever Ready Bunny. To you and your amazing Way Ahead team, Agnes, Billy, Chloe, Alyssa, Francie, Jennifer, Michelle, Nicole, Olivia, Peyton, and Wendy Presco, founder and president of NIED, thank you for working so tirelessly. To our social media and communication teams, I would like to acknowledge the wonderful job you did in marketing this event and using your creative skills and talent in spreading the word and generating interest, enthusiasm, and ultimately attendance. Our thanks then to Bracha, Cassandra, Megan, Lynn, Natalie, Richard, and Sarah. I would like to as well acknowledge and offer our thanks to our friends, the folks at Quest and Inventors, Greg, John, and Chris, for all the tech support and providing a seamless, accessible, and trouble-free evening. And lastly, our presenters. We are humbled by your participation, sharing your stories, and giving so freely of your time. Each of you represents a different component of our society, whether it's sports, education, the medical field, or research. There is, however, a common thread which runs through all of us, an overwhelming desire to help where help is needed most. On behalf of NIED, thank you to our panelists, Dr. Heather Wheeler, Kirsten Moore-Towers, Michaela Harley, Christy Allen, Ali Zlatar, Sarah Farquhar, Danielle Pellegrini, Sadaf Sami, Maria Nikula, Laura Grennan, Ari Maharaj, Jennifer Lee, Lindsay O'Reilly, Madison Hughes, Emma Kovacs, Emmy Stafford, Annie Thacker, Christina Takis, Elise Trudell. Successful events require more than planning and leadership and participation. And so in closing, thank you again, once again, to the folks at Frame for your generous co-sponsorship. In the chat, you will find a link to the NIED site. Feel free to visit and make your own contribution so that events such as tonight, presented by NIED, National Initiative for Eating Disorders, can keep happening. Thank you for joining us and have a great evening.